Oh yo everyone, welcome back to a new video on this channel. I'm Zodiac Arden and yes, we are finally here with Friday the 13th. Yeah, irony, right? Guys, I started making rankings one day with Friday the 13th and on Nightmare on Elm Street. These rankings were so bad that I decided to never upload them, and yeah, here we finally are, still doing them. As you guys know, I never got into Friday the 13th as much as Halloween, Saw, A Nightmare on Elm Street, so yeah, to start off with this, one out of the three I still have to do, share with Halloween and A Nightmare on Elm Street, I decided to, you know what, let's just do it. We'll see where we land and we'll see how this will receive, and yeah, so I think you guys wanted this ranking. I mean, you guys asking me about it in DM, and I'm talking to you guys since you guys are, some of you are my friends. So yeah, here we are. So without further ado, yeah, actually let's just get started because I want to get this shit done, and I like it. So yeah, let's get the show on the road. Coming at number 12, dead last, no shocker probably for most of you guys, is Friday the 13th. Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. Okay, first of all, let me clarify. This movie should have just been called Jason Takes a Titanic because more than half of this movie takes place on a fucking boat. Literally, all we see of Manhattan is the opening credits and the last 15 minutes. Now, apparently, okay, hear me out. The director had a lot of plans for this movie. Apparently, he had written scenes of Jason in the Empire State Building. He had written scenes of Jason killing people in Madison Square Garden and all around New York. It was gonna be this huge event movie. Unfortunately, the $5 million budget this movie had wouldn't allow for that. So they only had 2 days to film in New York, and believe it or not, but more than half of these New York scenes are filmed in Vancouver. Hence, all the alleyway. Honestly, it's hard to think of anything good this movie did. I mean, there is an unintentionally hilarious scene of Jason punching a guy's head off, and it's so unbelievably fake that you can see the styrofoam under the neck. Other than that, nothing. I was miserable watching this. It was so bad. None of the scenes are at all interesting. It moves at a snail's pace and it's so unbelievably boring. Kills aren't really that inventive outside the one I just talked about, and the acting is atrocious, although to be fair, that's kind of a running thing of these movies. But probably the biggest thing this movie is sinning is it had the balls, it had the nerve, it had the audacity to put Jason and Lady Deathstrike in the same movie and had it not result in a bloody deathmatch between the two. That's some bullshit. Me and this movie are not cool. Screw this thing. Coming in number 11 is actually, weirdly enough, the most recent entry of the franchise, being the Friday the 13th remake. Here is just another low point in this franchise for me. Now, if you like this film, have a ball, baby, but I don't. Like, at all. I remember seeing this movie in the theater as an 11-year-old, don't ask me how I got in, and leaving off so pissed off. But in interest of this list, I watched it again, and well, come on, it's at the number 11. I obviously still thought it was crap. I will give it this, it does have 2 likable leads in both Daniela Panabaker and Jared Padalecki. I feel both actors do a good job and with what they have, and they perform their parts well. I will also admit that there are a couple of decent kills in the movie, and Derek Mears is actually okay as Jason. But I'm sorry, this movie to me is a bore that does nothing new with the material of Friday the 13th, and what little new it tries to do makes very little sense. Setting traps around the lake for its victims, I could certainly understand. What I cannot understand is him taking a hostage and locking her up for months on end. What was he feeding her? Does Jason go to the store? Does he have a job at ShopRite or some shit? I know that, or the hostage is eating dirt rats for months and is somehow still alive, but you know, I digress. Honestly, this is really stupid. And he kidnaps her because she reminds him of his mother. Really? Really? Wow, that's lucky. Every character aside from those 2 leads is incredibly generic, and this wouldn't bother me if the pacing was any good, but it's not. Paced terribly, and it's boring as shit as a result. There is one character, Trent, who is the single most unlikable asshat in the history of this freaking franchise. Remember when I said that there are a few decent kills in this movie? His kill had me cry tears of joy. Also, I'd really like to know who is maintaining that crop of marijuana in Jason's territory, even if you want to assume that Jason was growing it himself. How did other people know about it and live to tell the tale? I'm calling shenanigans. Despite 2 charismatic leads and a more visceral Jason, I'm just bored by how generic this movie is. There is nothing here that hasn't been done better and before in this franchise. If you enjoy this remake, have fun guys, but to me it's just another Platinum Dunes remake. Sloppy, lazy, and unashamedly mediocre. Number 10 is Jason Goes to Hell: The Final Friday. Well, this was the first film made by New Line Cinema after Paramount sold the rights to them. And for those who don't know, I'm sorry, Paramount was actually catching shit for this series for many years. Angry parents, public interest groups, and social activists were constantly sending angry letters to the studios, even campaigning through newspapers and talking to talk shows having the series put to rest. However, the films didn't cost a lot to make and they made a lot of money as a result. So Paramount didn't see a reason to sell. That is, until, at least, Jason Takes Manhattan underperformed and they decided that, you know, the negative press was no longer worth it. So yeah. So let's just get this one out of the way first. This movie is beyond stupid. The ideas that this film incorporates, with Jason not being a human, but rather a body-hopping heart demon, has no place in this franchise. It makes sense. None. In any case, with anything we have seen up until this point. Jason, as we know him, is barely in the film. Now, with that said, I can definitely acknowledge the creativity that Adam Marcus and the screenwriters put into this film. I've got to give this movie some respect for the shit that it tries to do here. The effort to do something new and creative with the franchise is here and I give credit for that. But when it contradicts damn near everything else in the franchise, it's a bit hard to swallow. This is supposed to be part 9 in this franchise. It's not a do-over sequel like Halloween 2018 or anything. With all of that out of the way, the movie is retarded. It's entertainingly retarded, if you know what I'm saying. I really used to hate this film with a burning passion, but over time, I don't like it, but it's become more of a guilty pleasure of some sort. It does have some memorable death scenes, some awesome gore, and the makeup effects are great, and it ends on a kick-ass note. And trust me, don't worry, we get to that awesomeness very soon. Creighton Duke, played by Stephen Williams, is probably one of my favorite characters in this franchise. He is fucking hilarious. Every scene with him is either pure awesomeness or comedic gold. While this film blatantly disregards continuity, I will give it credit that it's actually had the balls to go all out with its insanity. The visuals, the style, the tone. This movie is very much its own animal. Needless to say, it's a film I respect more than I actually think it's good. There was a scene where Steven walks into the Voorhees house and finds the goddamn Book of the Dead from the Evil Dead series. I mean, granted it's the real only lead we have ever gotten as to how Jason could possibly be still alive after drowning at the lake at 8 years old, but you know, I digress, we gotta give him B. What else can I say about this? This movie is technically bad, especially as it's a sequel to the franchise. It makes no sense whatsoever and completely disregards any resemblance to continuity. That being said, if you can overlook these faults and enjoy it for what it is, yeah, you may find yourself having a good time with this. Coming in number 9 is Friday the 13th Part 3. Now, I'll admit, I respect this film for the fact that it was the first film that gave Jason his iconic hockey mask. This has not only one of the best Jasons of the series in Richard Brooker, but one of the best final girls of the series in Dana Kim as Chris. The reason this one is this low is that the first half of this film is ungodly fucking boring. I understand that some horror films are slow burns. Halloween and Alien, for example, are both great examples for this. But the build up in this movie is as far removed from interesting as you can get. It's a slog to get through. I actually almost put this below the Final Friday on this list because of this first half. Also, the cheap shots that were obviously meant for 3D really didn't help in this case. This has without a doubt one of the dumbest death scenes I've ever seen on film, and it was clearly only done for a bad 3D effect. That being said, once it gets going, it's solidly entertaining. It's really not that bad a film. There's more of a goofy tone of the film, not only in terms of characters, but in terms of Jason as well. It does make the film stand out on its own a little. It's not a great sequel, it's not really that great a movie, but if you can get through the sluggish first half, it can be a hell of fun. Coming in number 8 is Jason X. Well, first of all, let's be blunt here. It's Jason in space. The rest is just the standard Friday the 13th formula, but in space. And I'm 100% okay with that, because not only does this movie ever ask you to take it seriously, it knows it is ridiculous and just aims to be a fun experience, and it honestly is. The dialogue is so amazingly cheesy. Matter of fact, the dialogue is so cheesy, it's actually fun as hell. The characters are ridiculous, but kind of memorable, and the kills are some of the best in the franchise. There is a scene in this flick where Jason has a battle royale with this android. Then he is resurrected as Super Jason. I'm sorry, what is there not to love about this film? It's awesome. Hell, my biggest complaint for this movie is actually that there is not enough Uber Jason. I mean, for a movie pushing the tagline, evil gets an upgrade, he only gets that upgrade for like 20 fucking minutes before the movie ends. Jason X is ridiculously stupid and the forest thing from high art, but my god is it fun as hell. So yeah, you could choose to look at this film when the series took it too far, or you could look at this from what it was always meant to be, a fun and stupid little film that was only made to keep the lights on until the producers could get Freddy vs. Jason off the ground. I'm not even kidding, look it up. Do you guys remember me telling you guys I'm gonna make you guys angry with this list? Well, at number 7 we have Jason Lives. Yeah, I know, you little freaktards. Now, full disclosure, when I first saw this movie, I hated it. I absolutely despised it. There is a particular reason for it, but I'll talk more about it later when I discuss another film, don't worry. But upon research, I found out that this was actually the one that everyone loves, so some of you even consider it the best of the series. So I kept an open mind and rewatched it. But I have to admit, watching this film again, I found myself enjoying it a lot more. I understand why people love it, but I also think that it's beyond overrated. So let's just get started with my positives, okay? Tom McLaughlin directs the shit out of this film, okay? To be honest, this is one of the best directed films of the entire series. The shorts, the transitions, the atmosphere, it's all damn impressive. So kudos to the director. The performances of the side characters at the camp are pretty fun. We don't get much time with them, like really at all, but I genuinely enjoyed them when they were on screen, even if I knew they were going to die. The kills in this movie are just awesome. The scene in the camper alone has become one of my favorite scenes in the series, but what turned me off of this movie, and the reason it's still this low on this list, is that I hated every main character in this movie, especially Tommy Jarvis. Tommy Jarvis is a fucking twat. I wanted to strangle him like the Baron in Bastien Adrian always does with his phones at every point in this movie. Fuck this stupid asshole. Literally, the only reason Jason is alive is because this little douche canoe couldn't he just leave Jason alone to be warm food? It's been what, 15 fucking years since he's been dead and buried without making a peep, and he couldn't just leave him there? Literally, every death in this movie is because of you. Your friend who tagged along with you, the campers, the couple, the paintballers. All because of Tommy fucking Jarvis. Fuck this guy to death. I think what bothers me the most is that I really loved this character in the previous 2 films. I found it to be a legitimately engaging character, and the actors that played him in both did wonderfully. This guy? I was praying for Jason to cut his head off for most of this film, but it's not just him. The sheriff and his daughter have to be the biggest morons in this entire history of this franchise. And given some of the dumb moves characters have made in these films, that's saying as an accomplishment to say the least. The sheriff still thinks Tommy is the killer, even after he's locked up and murders are still happening. His daughter falls for Tommy faster than a Disney princess because I guess guys beyond bars that you don't know anything about are marriage material when your daddy's the sheriff. Then there is the opening scene, which is a monument to absolute stupidity, and not even in a fun way. It's just dumb. They dig up Jason's grave, which is easily accessible to the public for some reason. Jason actually has a grave, even though the last film stated clear as day that his body was cremated and not buried. Jason's head is somehow perfectly intact, even though Tommy cut it into fucking ribbons in part 4. Tommy starts stabbing the body with a giant pole instead of burning it like he went there to fucking do. Then a ball of lightning somehow hits the pole and resurrects Jason as a zombie, I guess. Look, it's not the worst opening sequence I've ever seen, but it's fucking up there. So yeah, the main character and the setup for this movie rubbed me the wrong way from the start. So you can understand why it took me a while to warm up for this flick. Overall, after a rewatch, I think the good things in this movie outweigh some of the bad. If you just want to see Jason go nuts killing people, you're gonna have it, because honestly, that's the best thing in this movie. When it stops trying to make us give a shit about the asshole main characters, it can be a lot of fun. If you want a movie with anything assembling likable leads or a decent setup, you're not gonna get it here as far as I'm concerned. That being said, if it's your favorite of the franchise, go ahead and enjoy it. This is all strictly my opinion, and I respect yours. And you're all gonna hate me again in about like 5 seconds. Number 6. Well, this is hard for me, guys. It's really hard, but it has to be said. You can do this, buddy. You can do this. And number 6, we have the original Friday the 13th. Yeah. I know. This surprises me, guys, but don't let the placement of this film fool you. It's not a bad film at all. The whole reason for me putting this film only at number 6 is because I think this movie does the same thing, or at least has the same premise as Halloween. And feels more as a Halloween copycat. But when I was watching this series for the first time, I was like, yeah, the original's gonna be king, nothing's gonna top it for me. I was wrong by a damn mile. I just found the next films in the series just a little bit better for me. I'm a man enough to admit when I'm wrong. Now, I'm talking about these films in a minute, but first let me praise this first film. What Sean Cunningham and writer Victor Miller did so well in this film was a sense of anonymity for the killer. Wow, that sounds off wrong, but anyway. All the kills are done using the killer's POV, and the film never hints at their identity. Now, some people hold this movie's speech to the fire by saying that the movie cheats, like, we never see the killer before the reveal, and thus the audience does not have a fair shake at figuring things out. I'm calling bullshit on this, and I'll tell you why. It's very simple. It's not a twist. It's a reveal. There is a difference, and not a fair shake. This film gives you a ton of clues. Townspeople saying the camp is cursed, check. An old man telling the counselors they are doomed, check. The information that a young boy drowned in a lake and that a bunch of counselors were murdered the following year, check. Like any good mystery, it doesn't hold your hand and trusts you to try to put the pieces together yourself. Even if the film had made her someone in town or someone helping at the camp, I'm pretty sure her son drowning in a lake would have come up in some kind of conversation. I'm sorry, but that argument is totally bullshit. I've listened to this argument for years, and it still pisses me off. Moving on. The kills in this movie are brilliant. The arrow into the bed, the axe to the head, that hiker is slowly backing up against the tree with nowhere else to run when her throat is slit. The list goes on, but my favorite kill, which I haven't mentioned yet, is the archery range scene. I don't need to see it happening to know what happened. It's like the truck scene in The Hitcher. Just imagining what happens in your head is more horrifying that can be shown on screen. The suspense is wonderful throughout the film, and I really like the characters in this film. They're not the best set of characters in the series or anything, but they feel like real people. They don't feel like scripted characters. These feel like actual people, and the work for the realistic approach this movie is going for. People often forget that the supernatural bullshit didn't come into fruition until the sequel. Even if people want to argue that Jason coming out of the lake at the end is something, well, that was just a dream, so it wasn't real. But what I really like about these characters is that there isn't really a main character until the end. This is something I loved so much in Alien as well. There is no real main character, and everyone is getting pretty much equal screen time until the ending, where the last heroine standing her has to confront the monster. Or elderly woman wielding a knife. Adrian King, Kevin Bacon, Laurie Bartram, may she rest in peace by the way, and even Janine Taylor all do a good work with the material they are given, but the star performance in this movie is Betsy Palmer as Mrs. Voorhees. This woman owns it. She is creepy, she is strong, she's intimidating, and at times scary as shit. Not traits you usually associate with elderly women, but yeah, you know, here you go. I remember being so creeped out seeing this for the first time and watching her imitate her son's voice. Palmer doesn't come in until like the last 30 minutes of the film, but she makes one hell of an impression. And lastly, not to forget, who could forget Tom Savini's brilliant makeup effects? When a girl gets an X to her head, it looks like a girl actually got an X to her head. It's brilliant. Coming in number 5 is the awesomeness that is Freddy vs. Jason. Ever since the ending of Jason Goes to Hell, fans were begging for this movie, and while it would take another 10 years for it to get made, it was well worth the wait. I love this movie to death. It's a film that respects both franchises with a ton of callbacks to the previous entries and gives us two of the biggest titans of horror duking it out in the most entertaining way you can imagine. I mean, Freddy flicking Jason around the boiler room like a pinball machine, Freddy launching oxygen tanks at Jason like torpedoes, Jason smacking Freddy through windows. When it comes to these two fighting, director Ronnie Yu of Bride of Chucky pulled out all the stops. The characters in this movie aren't half bad either. They're more memorable than most characters in the Friday the 13th franchise, and they can be fun. Except for Ghetto Jason Mewes. Jesus Christ, that guy. Hell, what the fuck is that shit? Robert Englund is enjoyable as ever as Freddy Krueger, and Ken Kirzinger, while nowhere near as good as Jason, as Ken Hodder, does a fine job as the character. I will admit it's a little shitty that they didn't let Ken Hodder play Jason, as he stated for years that he wanted to, quote, kick Freddy's ass in a movie, but for what I got, I wasn't dissatisfied. There are a few drawbacks to this movie though. For one, they didn't get Betsy Palmer to play Miss Voorhees, and it's a bit distracting to be honest. On top of that, Jason Ritter's performance is just dead on arrival, no pun intended. Other than that, I really don't have many issues with this film. It's a fun versus movie that respects the legacies of two classic horror franchises. Coming in number 4 is a film that has been crapped on for way too long, gets more shit than it deserves, and honestly, it's in a desperate need of a fair shake of the fans. And you haven't seen it on the list yet, so you might have guessed it's Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning. This is the one that gets dismissed because the killer isn't Jason. But that's why I love this film. I don't need Jason to be the killer for the entire series. There is nothing wrong with trying something new while still maintaining the same formula. Because that's exactly what this film does. Jason's head was mutilated at the end of part 4. He was dead. Kaput. End of story. Tot ziens. Hell, title is called A New Beginning. What the fuck were you people expecting from a movie called A New Beginning? A New Beginning is honestly the only one that comes close to emulating the original movie in terms of mystery and suspense. That's right, I said it. Bring the hate mail. What's up, bitches? This movie just said, hey, Jason is dead. But he wasn't the only killer in this franchise. Let's have a new killer, while simultaneously setting up another killer for a future movie. I'm sorry guys, they had the right idea here, but no, everyone bitched. Everyone wanted Jason back. So we got that unbelievably retarded opening in Jason Lives, so the fans wouldn't get their Jason boners back. Thanks a lot. I really hope that none other horror franchise in the future takes a cue from this. Oh wait! Okay. Please, I'm good. I'm fine. Let's just talk about why I love this movie so much, okay? First of all, the main character, Tommy Jarvis, and his portrayal by John Shepard is just wonderful. This is a kid who's gone through the traumatic experience of not only surviving Jason, but being the one to kill him at the end. Throughout the film, when he's on screen, you get such a good understanding of how that experience messed him up and the torment he's living with. He's so tormented at times that you think he might actually be the killer. And even he thinks he might be the killer. I'm sorry, this is so much more interesting than the annoying jackass we were given in Jason Lives. The film, like the original Friday the 13th, is more of a murder mystery. Well, the killer in this film is nowhere near as interesting as a character as Pamela Voorhees. We actually see this killer a couple of times in the film before he is shown to us. Compare this to the original, which had plenty of red herrings but never actually showed the killer before she was revealed to herself to us. They both work but on different levels. Here it's treated like a twist, whereas in the original it's simply just a reveal. On top of this, without spoiling anything, both this killer and Mrs. Voorhees have a similar kind of motive for their killings. So it definitely fits within the overall themes of the series. In my opinion, the characters, the new approach and the mystery angle were enough to make this one of my favorites in the series. Although I do hold it higher regard than most, I have to admit that the comedy in this film kills it at times. There is some hick woman and her son that show up and come across more annoying than anything else, and they really have no place here. I also concede that while the kills are pretty serviceable, that's what most of them are. Serviceable. That's what most of them are. Serviceable, like I just said. The one exception being the tree kill, which was pretty fucking intense in my opinion. So yeah, the film isn't perfect. It has some flaws, just like every film in this franchise. But I love it because it took Friday the 13th back to its roots and tried something new within the original film's formula. It said, no, we're not just gonna cheat and do something stupid to bring Jason back. We're not hacks. We're gonna try something more psychological and interesting whether you like it or not. I get some of the backlash, but hate this movie gets for not having Jason is beyond ridiculous. It's so undeserved. The ending of this movie sets up something really interesting that sadly we never come to see to fruition because of the fan backlash, and it really angers me. Guys, give this movie another chance. Coming at number 3 is a movie you guys haven't seen on the list so far, so you'll probably guess dual processing of elimination that my pick for number 3 is Friday Part 4, the final chapter. And before you guys go to the comments thinking I'm nuts, hear me out, okay? I really struggled in this top 3 and wasn't sure where I had to put which film and when making this list. While I do feel that the final chapter does something better compared to the next 2 films, I have to admit that the next 2 films, at least for me, are slightly more entertaining. But what this film does best is that it has the best group of characters. Corey Feldman is the original Tommy Jarvis of the franchise, and he pulls off a wonderful performance as a kid who confronts Jason. I thought the whole subplot of him making a mess was nice, of a homage to Tom Savini, and the fact that it becomes a major plot point later in the film only made it better. This film smartly knows how to set itself up for success. I love all the side characters and the actors playing them. They are so much fun to watch. They don't have the amount of realism that the characters of the original had, but this film had better actors, if I may be honest. When Jason starts hacking his way through these characters for the first time in this franchise, I felt horrible for each one of them, and usually I'll latch onto a few characters, but there's always usually a few that aren't interesting at all, and you know they are only in the film to add to the body count. But with these characters, I didn't want any of them to die. I love these guys. I want more of these guys, especially Crispin Glover. That guy is hilarious. He's just awesome in this flick. This film is suspenseful, it's at times unbearable tense, and the actor playing Jason this time is just brutal. The kills are great, the score is great, and the final showdown between Tommy Jarvis and Jason is just brilliant. This is not only one of the best in the series, I'll go as far to say this is one of the best sequels ever made, as well as one of the best slashes ever made of all time. At number 2 for me is a film that gets so much more shit from people than it actually deserves, and that's Friday Part 7, The New Blood. Most people I know don't like this movie, and I honestly don't understand why. It has one of the best main protagonists of the series. It has great kills, it has genuine suspense, it has a unique premise, which is actually a pretty tall order for the series when you think about it, and it was the first Friday film to give us Kane Hodder as Jason. It's funny because this film was originally planned as Freddy vs. Jason. Now, Paramount and New Line Cinema at the time couldn't reach an agreement, and while that film would eventually happen, them not reaching a deal left this film open to create something unique. Jason facing someone else with power, in this case telekinesis. Yeah, it essentially is just Freddy vs. Carrie. That's awesome! Why is no one acknowledging this? Why is this one people tend to forget about the most? This girl fucks Jason shit up. She drops a house on him, hangs him, lights his ass on fire, blows up a house with him inside of it. We've met a lot of great final girls in the series, but I'm sorry, I'm gonna call Lara Park Lincoln as Tina Shepard as the absolute best. She's a delight. She is made of awesome, and even when she's not fighting Jason, she pulls in one hell of a performance. It's such a great performance that does not get enough attention. The only thing I will grant the haters of this movie is, while I love the final showdown between Jason and Tina, how Jason is finally defeated is actually kind of stupid. I mean, I won't spoil it for those who haven't seen this film, and I understand what they were going for, but it doesn't make a lot of sense when you start to think about it. The rest of this movie is damn near flawless in my opinion. The premise is fun, the pacing is excellent, Jason has honestly never looked more than horrifying, the kills are brutal in some areas, and the final girl is my favorite of the series. Guys, we gotta turn this around. This is a Friday the 13th film that has gone underappreciated for too long and deserves a fair shake. If you've never seen this film, I highly recommend it. Coming in number 1, it may be a big shock for most of you, but it's Friday the 13th Part 2. I just love this movie. I'm actually a big fan of Steve Miner as a director, and even despite its dragged out first half, I like the work he did on Part 3. But with Friday the 13th Part 2, Miner created a great atmosphere and sense of dread once Jason started his killing spree. Even the opening sequence where he kills Alice is filmed beautifully. You know, once you get past the stupid recap of the first film. But okay, the head in the fridge, the ice pick to the head. Yeah, it sucks that Alice had to die, but she killed mommy. You don't kill mommy and walk away, so you're dead, bitch. The good actor, like the ones in the original, have a good chemistry with the one another, and I love the final girl in this movie played by Amy Steele. Ginny is a wonderfully written character and Steele does a beautiful job playing her. This is no surprise to me, as Amy Steele played a final girl of sorts in one of my favorite horror films, being April Fool's Day. I loved her final standoff with Jason and how she plays it. The movie smartly introduces and establishes early on that she studies child psychology, so the ending doesn't come out as a left field. Kills are very memorable and well done. The machete in the face, Ralph being strangled, the spear through the bed, these are some cool scenes. Now, people really like to mock the burlap sack that Jason wears from the first outing, but honestly, I love it. It's believable to me that a deformed mongoloid, I'm sorry for my pick of words, but living in the woods for goddamn knows how many years, would be more comfortable and accustomed to hiding his face in an everyday burlap sack than he would in a hockey mask. I'm not knocking the hockey mask, but the burlap sack always made more sense to me from a logical standpoint. I mean, how would you picture a mongoloid? Burlap sack with one eye hole or a roided up Casey Jones? Just think about it, that's all I'm saying. Overall, Friday the 13th Part 2 is definitely the best film in this franchise and it's my favorite. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this ranking. Please don't forget to like. Please don't forget to subscribe. Leave a nice comment below with where you tell me what your ranking is of this franchise. I mean, my list is not the correct list. Yours aren't as well, but I just want to know where we all come to agree with this franchise. I mean, I think these franchises, Halloween, Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street, are maybe the 3 franchises to rank the opinions are separate, if you know what I'm saying. So, thank you guys for watching, please don't forget to like, and see you next week, tot volgende week!